Thanksgiving was always Jenna's favorite holiday. She said it gave her a reason to dress up without having to buy gifts. She arrived late, of course, wrapped in a tan coat she probably borrowed from Mom's closet, laughing too loudly and calling the turkey tragic before even sitting down. I had gotten there early to help with the green bean casserole. I brought a pie, homemade, pecan, still warm when I placed it on the counter. No one commented on it, but that wasn't new. The dining room smelled like gravy cranberry and floor polish. They'd added leaves to the table this year, made it longer than usual. A second chair had to be borrowed from the basement. I offered to help carry it up, but Uncle Mike waved me off like always. Jenna brought the centerpiece, pumpkins and fake gold leaves from the dollar store, but Mom clapped like it was Martha Stewart herself. We sat down just after 4. Jenna took the seat at the end where Dad usually sat. No one said a word about it. He moved to the side like it was expected. I found my place at the far corner next to the kid chair meant for Ellie. The card in front of my plate didn't have my name. It just said Claire's spot in someone else's handwriting. The blessing was short. Just a few words from Dad about gratitude and holding each other close. And then forks started moving. It was halfway through dinner when it happened. Jenna set down her wine glass, dabbed at her mouth with the cloth napkin, and smiled. A quiet kind of smile. Polished, practiced. Then she looked across the table right at me. "We talked about it," she said. "You're out." It took a second for the words to land. Not because I didn't hear them, but because she said it like she was offering me a second helping of stuffing. Calm, casual, final. Mom didn't flinch. Dad reached for the mashed potatoes. Aunt Linda took a sip of wine. No one looked at me. That was the part I remember most. Not the words. The way no one looked. I didn't stand. I didn't shout. I just sat there, my hand resting on my lap, the fork still on my plate. I think the turkey had gone cold, but I couldn't taste it anyway. After a long, long moment, I said softly, "All of you." And when no one answered, I knew. It didn't start with money. Not at first. The first thing I ever gave Jenna was time. When we were kids, she used to wake me up crying about monsters in the closet. Mom would yell from down the hall to just go back to sleep, but I never did. I'd sit with her flashlight in hand until she could breathe again. Later, it was rides to practice, late-night grocery runs, editing her college essays while I was in my own finals week. She called me her standby sister. Funny how I thought that meant something good. When I moved out at 19, no one helped me pack. I took what I could carry and left behind the rest, most of it borrowed anyway. I worked through college 2 jobs at once, slept on a friend's futon the first semester. No one asked how I was doing. No one sent care packages. Jenna dropped out halfway through her sophomore year. When she came back home, Mom called it a needed pause. I never got one of those. She married Bryce 2 years later. The wedding was small but expensive. Mom cried about the florist bill, so I paid half of it. Quietly. Jenna said I was finally acting like a big sister. Bryce lost his job the next spring. They said it was restructuring. I sent a check to cover rent, just until he gets back on his feet. Then Jenna's car broke down. Then Ellie needed therapy. Then the heat bill came due. Every time it was just a little help. Every time I said yes. I told myself it was love. That's what you do for family. You don't make them beg. You just show up. By the end of 5 years, I had sent just over $84,000. I know that number exactly because I checked. Not once did anyone offer to pay me back. Not once did anyone say, "You've done enough." What they did say was, "Well, you don't have a family of your own, Claire. Must be nice to have all that free time. You can work late. You don't have to rush home to a kid." Jenna called me the Bank of Big Sis once. I laughed. At the time, I thought it was just teasing. Looking back now, it wasn't teasing. It was a job description. When Mom needed dental work and her credit wouldn't clear, I paid. When Dad slipped on ice and didn't have enough saved for physical therapy, I paid. When Cousin Alyssa got waitlisted for a scholarship, I co-signed her loan. That one stung later. They always said thank you. Polite passing, like they'd just received an Amazon delivery, and I kept giving. Even when Jenna joked in front of everyone that I was just bitter because no one picked me. Even when Mom said during dinner one Christmas you could at least try to be more warm. That winter, I gave up asking to be seen. I told myself it's okay. They don't need to notice me. They just need help. I can be useful. I thought being useful would be enough. But when the giving stopped, when I finally said no to something they wanted, that's when I found out what I really was to them. Replaceable. And now, disposable. It wasn't sudden. There wasn't a blow-up fight, no screaming match in the driveway. I wasn't blocked overnight. It came like slow rot, quiet, deliberate. The first thing I noticed was the group chat. We had one called Morgan Thanksgiving that started every year in mid-October. Recipes, flight times, which cousin was bringing what. That year, it never lit up on my phone. I thought maybe they were taking a break. Turns out they just started a new thread without me. Then came Ellie's birthday. I'd bought her a small necklace, silver chain little fox charm, her favorite animal. I mailed it the week before. No reply. No photo of her opening it. No text from Jenna. 3 days later, I saw pictures online. Party hats, a backyard bounce house cake with Ellie's name on it. I wasn't in any of the photos. I wasn't even in the room. I asked Mom gently why I hadn't been invited. She said, "We figured you'd be busy." That was it. No apology, just a shrug through the phone line. Then came Christmas. I arrived with gifts only to find mine weren't under the tree. They'd forgotten to add my name to the draw. The table had 8 place settings. There were 9 of us in the house. I ate on a folding chair in the corner. That night, I offered to help clean. Jenna handed me a trash bag and said, "You're good at disappearing." It was supposed to be a joke. I laughed weakly, but I felt something shift in my stomach, like a door that used to be open had just shut. In January, I reached out to Dad about his follow-up for physical therapy. He told me Jenna had it covered now. She said it's time you got to rest. That was strange. No one had ever suggested I rest before. By March, the calls stopped. Even the ones about money. I checked my calendar like I'd missed something, some argument, some moment where I'd crossed a line. But there was nothing, just silence growing in the space where I used to be needed. They didn't tell me I was no longer family. They didn't have to. They just made sure I felt like a guest in my own bloodline, one who had overstayed her welcome. So I did what I hadn't done in years. I started saving things. Screenshots, bank transfers, emails, voice memos. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet. I just knew if they were going to erase me, I wanted to at least remember I was there. Once. I didn't bring it to start a fight. I brought it because I knew somewhere in my gut that they'd already made their decision. When Jenna smiled across the table and said, "You're out," I didn't need clarification. I just needed to be sure they knew I hadn't been blind, or soft, or forgettable. So I reached into my bag and pulled it out a blue folder worn at the edges thick enough to make a sound when it hit the table. Thunk. Everything stopped. Jenna blinked. "What's that?" I didn't answer, just nudged it toward the middle of the table with 2 fingers. "Since I'm out," I said. "You won't need this." She laughed, tight and sharp. "Claire, what is this, a resume for re-entry?" I didn't speak. I didn't have to. She opened it. First page itemized list of every financial contribution I'd made over the last 6 years. Date, amount, recipient, reason. Her name appeared 23 times. She turned the page. Printed email exchanges, her asking me to spot her for Ellie's private school deposit. Text messages with hearts at the end. "Sis, you're a lifesaver." Then came the screenshots. One from a group chat I wasn't supposed to see. Claire has no boundaries. She thinks money makes her important. Jenna's words, not taken out of context. Then another, this one stung more. A private comment thread between Jenna and Alyssa. Claire's not even a person. She's a checkbook with anxiety. I watched her hands start to tremble. By the 4th page, her mouth pressed shut. By the 5th, her ears turned red. And then, page 7, a hotel invoice. Santa Monica. 2 nights, ocean view. Room for 2. Name on the reservation, Bryce Morgan. Second guest, Alyssa Cunningham. She froze. Everyone else kept pretending to chew until they couldn't. Bryce's fork clinked against his plate. He leaned over, pulled the folder toward him, flipped back and forth. "This real?" he asked, voice low. I nodded. He read again, said nothing, just got up, walked out the front door. It didn't slam. That almost made it worse. Jenna finally looked at me, her face pale but tight. "You had no right to collect this." I met her gaze. "And you had no right to erase me." "But you did." Mom whispered something. I didn't catch it. Dad took off his glasses, rubbed his eyes like it was a movie he didn't want to finish. "I'm not here to ruin anyone," I said, voice steady. "I'm here to end it. Quietly, if you'll let me." No one moved. The folder sat in the middle of the table like a weight. No one wanted to touch it again. Jenna's napkin was still in her lap. The wine in her glass had gone untouched, just like the pie I brought. For a moment, no one moved. Bryce's footsteps faded down the hall. Then the door clicked shut. Not a slam. Just final. Jenna sat with her shoulders squared but her eyes unfocused, like she hadn't expected that folder to bite back. Her fingers were still tucked beneath the table out of view, probably clenched. Mom made a small noise, tried to recover. She reached for the gravy boat voice. Then, "It's Thanksgiving. Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be." I looked at her, not unkindly. "It's already the right size. You just didn't expect to see it laid out." Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out something smaller. A second folder. White, clipped shut. Dad exhaled, loud enough for the whole table to hear. I slid it forward slow, deliberate. He opened it, read the first page. Then he passed it to Mom without a word. She squinted at the top line, lips moving silently, then frowned. "What is this?" she asked, genuinely confused. "I've revoked power of attorney," I said. "Medical and financial, for both of you." She blinked. "Why would you—" "I've also removed myself as your emergency contact, and from all shared financial documents." Dad rubbed his forehead the way he did when the weather changed and his back hurt. "You went through all that already last week," I said. There was no cruelty in my voice, just the sound of something completed, filed, finalized. Jenna let out a short, bitter breath. "You think this makes you strong?" "Showing up with receipts, signing yourself out like you're above everyone." I turned to her. Not angry, just steady. "No, I think it makes me finished." She snorted. "You're just mad no one needs you anymore." I let that sit for a second, looked around the table. The candles were burning low. The stuffing had gone cold. The room smelled like rosemary and distance. "I was never mad," I said. "I was tired. There's a difference." I reached for my coat. Mom's voice cracked as she stood barely above a whisper. "Claire, we were angry. We said things we didn't mean." I paused just enough for her words to reach me. "No, Mom. You meant them. You just didn't expect consequences." She stepped forward. Her face softened, not like forgiveness, but like habit. "This is still your family." I met her eyes. "No. This is a room full of people who benefited from forgetting me." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask them to feel bad. I just picked up my pie from the counter untouched, tucked it gently under one arm, and turned toward the door. Nobody stopped me. That was the clearest answer I ever got from any of them. Outside, the air was sharp. The wind pressed against my coat like it was testing for cracks. I kept walking. I didn't need to slam the door. The silence behind me did it for me. The drive home was quiet. I didn't put on the radio. I didn't call anyone. I just let the road stretch ahead of me like something clean. The pie sat on the passenger seat, still warm, still untouched. When I got back to my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights right away. I stood in the entryway, coat still on, and let the stillness settle. Not because I needed time to think, but because I was finally allowed to stop. The first night, no one called. The second, still nothing. On the third day, I got the first message, a missed call from Mom, then a voicemail. Her voice was small, measured. "Claire, we were angry, but we're still your family." I didn't answer. Then Jenna texted, "You don't even realize what you've done." Bryce moved out. Ellie's confused. "Are you happy I left it unread?" Dad messaged next. You went too far. We all said things. But what you did was nuclear. Your mother hasn't stopped crying. That part almost got to me. But then I remembered the way she reached for the gravy boat like nothing had happened. That memory was sharper than guilt. And still, I didn't answer. I thought I'd lie awake, toss, turn. I didn't. I slept. Deep, still sleep. For the first time in years, I didn't flinch when my phone buzzed. I didn't wait for the next emergency, the next ask, the next guilt-soaked apology with a price tag. I got up early, went for walks, started brewing my coffee slow again on the stove, not the machine. Started taking appointments I had put off for years. Dentist, doctor, even therapy. Not because I was broken, but because I had space now to care for myself without permission. I changed my passwords, blocked Jenna on every platform, removed access from every joint account they once used to pull from. It wasn't revenge. It was closure. One quiet morning, I sat on my balcony with that same pie finally sliced. Still good, still mine. I looked out over the street bare trees the way fall gives into winter without arguing, and for the first time, I didn't feel hollow. I just felt done. It came a week after Thanksgiving. A thin envelope, hand-addressed. No return name, but I recognized the handwriting childish uneven the way most 7-year-olds write when they're excited. Inside was a folded sheet of construction paper, bright purple, stickers of foxes and stars. On the front, in shaky crayon letters, I miss you, Aunt Claire. Inside a drawing, 2 people holding hands, one tall, one small. A fox between them, a sun in the corner half colored in. Grass that was too green for winter. No words, just the picture. I stared at it for a long time. Not crying, just still. I ran my fingers over the paper. It had small ridges where the crayon pressed harder. The kind of thing kids do when they really mean it. There was no message from Jenna. No manipulation. Just Ellie. Pure. Unknowing. I folded the paper carefully. Not to throw away, not to answer, just to keep. I slipped it into the drawer next to my bed behind old photographs and an unused checkbook. A place for quiet things that once mattered. A place I visit but don't live in. That night I slept with the window cracked. The air was cold, but it didn't hurt. It was late December when the quiet finally stopped feeling temporary. I was sitting on the porch, coat zipped mug in hand, the kind that warms your palms before anything else. The wind carried dry leaves across the sidewalk. A neighbor walked by, nodded once, didn't ask questions. I appreciated that. There were no voicemails waiting, no texts, no knocks at the door, not even a holiday card with the Morgan family and matching sweaters. For the first time, the silence didn't ask anything of me. It didn't feel like a gap waiting to be filled. It just was. I leaned back in the chair. The wood creaked familiar. Honest. My breath clouded in the air, disappeared, came back again. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to be needed, trying to prove I was worth a seat at a table that had already decided I didn't belong. And I thought I never had to earn anything. I just had to stop offering myself up for free. Inside the pie tin sat empty in the sink. The light was still on. But I stayed on the porch a little longer. Not because I was waiting, because I wasn't. If you've ever been the one who left quietly not to be missed, but to finally breathe, just leave a single dot. So we know you were here,